Civilization Restarted series. Well, war breaks out again between these two nations. This nation thinking they're stronger now after winning not too long ago decides they are going to go back to this war. As the Red Nation crosses the borders. Yeah, these need to be named soon. Well, for now, that's great. As the Red Nation crosses and mounts a strong offensive, the nation to the north gets pushed back significantly. But in these mountains, a counter-offensive occurs, and it pushes them back. They cross the border in some areas. And they even launch a cross-border attack over here to try to mess with supply lines, which works a bit, but not the best. As they manage to cross again over here, the front line starts to collapse over here. But they attempt to hold this back and hold their offensive. And push them back, but that's a fail. As this offensive gets more troops and more troops. And while in the mountains, they're launching stronger attacks. But this front line gets pushed back as supplies aren't strong enough. Supply routes aren't working out. And well, they start getting pushed back across the whole front. As there's so many troops have been mobilized now that's overwhelming the forces of the south. And well, I think this is the only nation after them. But the Green Nation, the Imperial Green Nation, decides to start an offensive against them. And while they march right in, with them losing on multiple fronts, they start trying to mobilize as much as they can. And quickly, but since it's so late, it's hard to mobilize fast. Instantly. Can't. As they dive to the coast, and the forces manage to seize to the coast. A big amount of land is now seized, and they're also contending with a nation on the other front. They should probably be giving up, but they're not. Well, they lose more of the coast, which isn't great. And they start losing more in the mountainous lands, which would be an hour timeline, being Afghanistan and Pakistan areas. As the Green Nation links its forces up to the Blue Nations through that offensive, both sides have more strength. With the nation being a bit refusive to surrender, until desertion becomes out of control within the armies, and they're failing to launch any counterattacks. And they're losing more of the coast steadily. They decide, well, to meet for a peace treaty. Being gave to the Blue Nation, with lands in the east being gave to the Green Nation. And over here, 2 puppets are created by the Blue Country. Well, the Gold Nation decides it's time to start an offensive. Why? Well, because they believe their enemy would be weakened from that war. And well, they start a full-on offensive and manage to grab lots of lands, as they believe that if they don't act now, their enemy will be strong enough to take off all their lands. as they take the coast to the Blue Nation. The Blue Nation attempts a counteroffensive, but doesn't go very well, as they are pushed all the way back. So they decide to meet for a peace treaty, but in the peace treaty, it's not a harsh peace treaty. Up to here is made as puppets, so not very far, not even close to all the front line. And why they do this is to have more control. But directly annexing this is not a great idea for them because, well, it holds a bit of resistance. It's easier to deal with than a puppet. And, well, these two nations don't do much. Neither does any of these nations. But two nations here end up at a war. These two nations, the purple and the blue. With the Blue Nation doing this to get more access to resources but this nation isn't very strong. No, it takes it a while, as they go mostly for these lands where all the resources are. And well, they take enough of it, and then they take more. And to prevent losing their coast, they decide to negotiate out. But they do lose quite a significant amount of land. But they still keep a lot of land. If they had have kept going, the full nation would have been occupied, as this nation has the forces to back behind its strength. And well, over here, these two nations are having some tension. The Green Nation gets close to these two nations so they can have some support in case of a war against that nation, which they know is going to happen. And over here, these two nations agree on a partition. Regardless of who occupies what, it's going to be partitioned the same way. Them coming in from the south, and these guys coming in from the west. And well, these two nations form an alliance, as they're advancing faster, which was our prediction because they have more land to access it from. As this nation ends up collapsing. So let's see how they split it. And while it's not split how you might think it would be, one nation does get more, but that was going to happen in the... And well, they split it like this, as both nations needed to gain some land. But they both have future gains that now they can agree on after partitioning this. And well, this purple nation ends up at war. And well, they end up invading it. But that nation there goes with this nation to have some support, which they get in forms of security guarantees. Which means don't invade that nation unless you want to fight that nation. And well, this nation, deciding to increase its puppet state, decides to invade here. And the other nation, deciding to expand its lands, decides to invade here. And well, they get a lot of lands quick. But this nation, coming in from over here, manages to continue advancing longer, getting further. So they partition it, with one nation annexing what they get and the other nation puppeting. With them giving their puppet these lands and then creating a puppet there. The other nation annexes a bunch of land. That looks kind of like the Yellow Nation gaining lands. The Orange Nation decides to annex the Purple Nation, as they're still on the road to imperialism. And well, that's pretty much all for today's video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Wild Mapper out, and until you subscribe. Bye, guys!